The talent will rise to the top, and we'll be confident about identifying one guy as the best guy, end quote. ESPN currently has Georgia's Anthony Edwards ranked as the top prospect, followed by LaMelo Ball and James Wiseman. The T-Wolves won the lottery 2 months ago, but are apparently still weighing their options here. Amin, you're the former front office insider here, or your current front office insider, former front office guy. What's your takeaway from Rosas' comment?
Well, I think, first of all, George, you look at this draft, he's right. It is very flat. That's not to say there aren't any good players. It's just there's no standout number one overall player for the most part. And, the last time I felt this way was probably 2013, where there were just a bunch of names, and you could tell me this guy could go 1 or he could go 7, and I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. And back in 2013, you might have said, oh, it's because it's a weak draft. But we look on the screen right now, some of these names, including obviously Giannis, a 2-time MVP, and Rudy Gobert, a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year, it's clear that there was talent in the draft. It just wasn't considered number one overall talent. So when I look at what Minnesota's doing, and I say to myself, Gerson Rosas is saying, I'm not in love with any of these guys. I like a couple of them, but I'm not in love with them. So let me see if I can trade this pick to someone who's in love with somebody, and I can get multiple picks or multiple assets and get some more help in there.
Paul?
Absolutely. I mean, when I look at these guys, I mean, Anthony Edwards is clearly the best player, I feel like, but I don't feel like there's that player that's franchise changing for me. And so I believe when I look back at that 2013 draft, you see Giannis was the best player taken at 15. And I see the similarities in this draft. The best player in this draft won't be in the top 5.
Oh.
It'll be somebody that we probably not even talking about right now. The best player will not be in the top. Let's think about this. You look at that draft. Antetokounmpo went 15. Rudy Gobert, 27. Same similarities. I feel like the best player in this draft will probably not be a top 5, possibly not even be a top 10 pick. We just don't know.
Wow.
And that's how unclear that this draft is.
George, I'll throw in another wrinkle into this for Minnesota. Remember, their 2021 first-round pick is completely unprotected going to Golden State.
Yeah.
Everyone says 2021 is a deeper draft, it's a better draft. So Minnesota has an extra incentive to basically need to have someone in there who helps them win. And that probably isn't going to be someone who's 18 or 19 years old. That's probably going to be an established NBA player playing for another team. And so Rosas is probably on the phone trying to find who is that vet who can come into this program and at least get us to some form of respectability. It may not be playoffs, but it damn sure shouldn't be a top 5 pick to Golden State for nothing.
Right, for sure. I would agree with that. Look, I like Anthony Edwards in this draft. And look, Tom Crean is his coach, and you already can see the comparisons to like a Victor Oladipo or a Dwayne Wade. I'm not saying he's going to be those guys, but I think that there are some similarities to his game, particularly Oladipo, who Crean is certainly familiar with, right? Yeah. So those are some of the comps that you're seeing there when you hear about Anthony Edwards. And I see some of that when I watch his tape and I watch his games. You know, LaMelo Ball, I think, is a bit of an unknown. Like, he played against men in Australia, so I think we got to give him credit for that, certainly. But I don't know about the talent that he's playing there. Now, Amin, I'll ask you, and Paul, I'd love to get your thoughts too. Like, what type of talent is LaMelo Ball facing in Australia in comparison to the top-tier college basketball talent that he'd be facing?
I think it's comparable in the sense that it's tough talent. These guys are vets and they're professionals in playing ball, but the athleticism he's seen down there is not anywhere near what he would see in college or in Europe. And, you know, as my buddy Fran Fraschilla likes to say, it's not quite the same, right? It's not the same language. It sounds the same. It's like Portuguese and Spanish. They sound similar, but they're not the same language. Same thing here. I think LaMelo, what he's dealing with is, I think, a level of competition that may have improved his decision-making or improved some of the things he had to think about. But in terms of athletically having to beat someone who with some jumps, some hops, having to finish over length, he didn't really have to deal with any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really, when I look at LaMelo and I'm trying to draft it, I'm not even looking at, you know, his competition, which you have to take a deeper look at his skill set. You know, he's a guy who fits in with today's NBA. we don't know sometimes when these top college guys or these top overseas guys, their skill set will translate. But I do like what I'm seeing so far. I like the way he can pull up off the dribble. I like the way he makes his teammates better. He's a big guard with a great handle. And so as far as looking at it, his skill set, I really like what he brings to the table. It's just where can he go where he can really develop that skill set and possibly turn into a good NBA player, maybe a great one.
All right, let's take a deeper look here at the Warriors, who have the number 2 pick in the draft. Here's ESPN's way too early power rankings. And they have the Golden State Warriors as the 6th best team going into next season and only the 5th best team
way too early
in the Western Conference. Exactly, it is way too early. Behind the Lakers, Clippers, Denver Nuggets, and the Dallas Mavericks. The big three of Steph, Klay, and Draymond are all in their 30s now. Klay Thompson hasn't played in a game since his injury in the 2019 finals. And this roster has had a lot of turnover since their last championship run. So, Paul, do you expect the Warriors to be at their dominant level again?
Well, I think it's all going to predicate what they do with this draft pick. If they can turn this draft pick and say maybe a trade with Wiggins to acquire another all-star or all-star caliber player, then yes, they can get back into contention. And the name that comes to mind that if you could look at somebody on the Eastern Conference, if they can find a way to trade the number 2 pick for Wiggins and possibly get a guy like Vucevic, who I think could go in there and then fit right in amongst their guards. He gives them a down-low presence. He can knock down shots. Maybe, he doesn't fit into their future plans in Orlando. That's a guy that I could say he'll fit right in with Golden State. If they can do that, then yes. But if not, they'll be right where, we have them ranked in there in that middle pack, 5th, 6th in the Western Conference.
I'm going to be honest, George. I don't think dominance returns for Golden State. I think now they're just one of the pack. And number 6, to me, that's not dominant. That's one of the pack, and that's cool. And here's a big reason why. Everyone focused on Golden State's success around the big 3 or the big 4 when Durant was there. And that's right. Those guys were really good. But the thing that we never talked about was their supporting cast. Their supporting cast was so deep and so experienced and talented. Guys like Iguodala and Andrew Bogut and David West and Leandro Barbosa and Sean Livingston. These are higher caliber role players than you see in most NBA teams. And that's what really made them super hard to beat beyond their top level talent. Now what they are is going to be a really good team that's in contention. And I believe that's whether they keep the pick or trade the pick, unless we're talking about a Giannis Antetokounmpo type trade. But absent someone like that coming to Golden State, I think they're just going to be one of those teams. We'll go to conference finals one year, maybe 1 year make the finals, maybe we'll win a championship. But dominance, I just don't see it happening anymore.
Yeah, that's a great point, particularly about the role players that you mentioned. You're talking about high-level, high IQ type guys. And look, they're not going to beat themselves. And they already had the 3 stars that they were playing with. But let me ask you this, Paul, about those 3 guys specifically. What do you expect to see out of them? I think that there's still somewhat. I think we think Steph is going to still be Steph Curry. But, Klay's coming off a serious injury. We know he can shoot the heck out of the ball. But where does his athleticism go with that particular injury? And what to expect from Draymond? What do you expect from those 3 guys?
Well, they're going to fill in their roles like they did before the injuries. Klay never really relied on athleticism. We've seen a guy score 60 points off, 7 dribbles?
Right. But defensively, he had to move around.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you lose a step on defense the older you get. He's not going to be that great defender he was coming off an injury. He'll be a solid defender. I expect Steph to be Steph, especially with a year off of rest, getting his body to repair and come back fresh. And Draymond, he's going to fill in the gaps like he did before. He's not the star everybody thought he was when he's out there by himself and everybody expects him to score 20, 10 rebounds, 10 assists without Klay and Steph. But he's going to fill in that role nicely with these guys back and they'll be fine. When you got 3 caliber players like those guys, they're going to be good and very good.
Those 3 guys, what do you think?
I think they'll be fine. They fit one another so perfectly and they know each other's games. I think that's not the issue. Again, I hate to harp on it, but when you look at the rest of that roster, it's a lot of young players who have never won in this league.
Yeah.
Starting with Wiggins all the way down. And so you're not just expecting those 3 guys to be themselves and be great, but they also have to raise basically a crop of children and teach them how to play and how to play winning Warriors basketball. And that's a process. I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'm just saying it doesn't happen overnight. Those guys have a lot to learn. And so you're asking the big 3 to be teachers as well as producers. And that can be tough.
Yeah, a lot of hand-holding. There's no question about that. All right, coming up next, our fearless leader, Rachel Nichols, sat down with brand new Clippers head coach Ty Lue. You'll hear what he said about facing the Lakers coming up next season and what Doc Rivers told him about taking on the Clippers job. That's coming up next. Stick around here on The Jump.